With a long history in cinemas, people love to watch vampires battle it out with werewolves, each movie to their own with variations of the original creatures. Movie Spotlights brings us the best vampire versus werewolf movies, and in some cases how they battle it out. What powers do these vampires have? Can you guess which movie is the best vampire versus werewolf movie? Stay tuned to find out. Don't forget, if you love vampire versus werewolf movies, subscribe to Movie Spotlights now. At number 5, 30 Days of Night. Now there are 2 movies with 30 Days of Night and its sequel 30 Days of Night Dark Days, but we think the original is the better movie. This vampire thriller about an Alaskan town Barrow which is plunged into darkness for a month when the sun sinks below the horizon and the sun is not seen in the Arctic Circle. As the last rays of light fade, the town is attacked by a bloodthirsty gang of vampires who are hell-bent on an interrupted orgy of destruction. The movie stars Josh Hartnett and Melissa George as an estranged couple, Eben and Stella Olsen. Eben is Barrow's sheriff who investigates and learns that his estranged wife Stella has missed the last plane out of town and must stay the 30 days in town. A band of vampires led by Marlowe, played by Danny Houston, attack and slaughter most of the townsfolk, forcing any survivors to take shelter in a boarded-up house in a hidden attic as the vampires go from house to house, terrorizing and feasting on the town's population for 30 days. The vampires look soulless and are vulnerable to sunlight and have superhuman strength and speed, so take advantage of the prolonged darkness to openly kill townspeople and feed like animals at will. There is a surprising twist at the end as to how Eben is able to eventually defeat Marlowe.
Forgive me, Father.
Coming in at number 4, Priest Paul Bettany stars as the priest in this interesting take on vampires, where priest disobeys a church, as warrior priests are outcast by the church to track down vampire Black Cat, played by Carl Urban, who kidnapped his niece Lucy, played by Lily Collins. This post-apocalyptic thriller in this alternate world which has been ravaged by war between humans and vampires for centuries. Priest is a legendary warrior from the last vampire war who lives in obscurity, hiding among inhabitants in dystopian cities ruled by the church. Priest comes out of hiding, breaking his sacred vows when his niece is abducted by a murderous pack of vampires to rescue her before they turn her into a vampire. He bands together with former warrior priestess played by Maggie Q and Lucy's boyfriend to take on the vampires to save Lucy. Black Cat drank the blood of Vampire Queen and turns into a human-vampire hybrid, so has sunlight immunity as well as vampire super speed, agility, strength and senses to smell blood in a person's veins. He can also heal and regenerate from any wound. We have Daybreakers in the number 3 spot, where it is 2019 and where a plague has transformed almost every human into vampires. In this vampire fantasy world, with only 5% of the human race remaining, the dormant vampire population is faced with a dwindling blood supply and have to ration what is left. What do the vampires do as they are starved with blood? They evolve into bat-like creatures called subsiders that attack anyone, including other vampires, in order to survive. The vampires plot for their survival as a researcher, Dr. Edward Dalton, played by Ethan Hawke, works to find an artificial blood supply to feed the vampire population and save mankind. The vampires in this movie cannot die, as they're already dead, right? They have golden eyes and cannot be exposed to UV light, and of course must feed on human blood. As they do not have a heartbeat, they cannot feel pain, although these vampires do not have super strength or speed like other vampire movies. Interestingly, in this movie we see a reversal where vampires can be turned back into human form. Coming in at number 2, The Twilight Saga, and I'm sure everyone knows the infamous story of Bella Swan, played by Kristen Stewart, who moves into the cloudy town of Forks, Washington. Bella falls in love with the mysterious and dazzling and beautiful Edward Cullen, played by Rob Pattinson, a 108-year-old vampire. This unorthodox romance leads to trouble as Bella is attacked by vampire James that almost claims her life.
You brought a snack.
I'll never stop!
Tell him to avenge you.
In the second movie, New Moon, Jacob Black, who is the member of the Quility tribe, and Bella discovers that Jacob has a secret of his own, being a member of a giant werewolf pack. We are first able to see a battle between vampires and werewolves in the Twilight Saga Eclipse, as a malicious vampire, Victoria, seeks revenge for her mate James, who was killed by the Cullens. We see an army of newborn vampires led by Riley as the March to Forks attack the Cullen clan, only to find themselves being surprised by an ambush of a pack of werewolves who, despite being greater in numbers, fight blindly and recklessly. One of the best vampire versus werewolf scenes is in the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2, where the Volturi, who are considered the closest things the vampire race has to royalty and are above the law, battle the Cullens and other vampire clans to protect Bella and Edward's child Renesmee against false allegations, as it is a violation to turn a child into a vampire. It's pretty epic as we see they are surprised by the werewolves, which they were definitely not expect to see fighting alongside vampires. Vampires in this movie are atypical, as they can be out in daylight and glimmer like diamonds in the sunlight. They don't possess fangs, and of course are vegetarian vampires, being able to fall in love with humans. But like other vampire movies, they can run faster than a mountain lion, stop a moving car with bare hands, and of course Edward hasn't aged since 1918, since he's immortal. Unique to the Twilight Saga, we also see many vampires having interesting unique powers. Edward has telepathy to see and hear other thoughts. Alice, played by Ashley Greene, has precognition, and Bella, once she turns into a vampire, has a protective shield that she can share with others. Renesmee can project visions and thoughts into others via physical touch, and the Volturi maintain a powerful collection of powers, as Jane can project the illusion of extremely intense pain in others' minds. Aro can see every thought someone has. Other vampire clans exhibit pretty cool powers, as Zafrina can project a vision into others' minds, and Kate can cover her body with an electric current, and Benjamin can manipulate the 4 elements of nature. Before we reveal the movie Spotlight's pick for the best vampires versus werewolf movie, be sure to smash that subscribe button now. In the top spot, we have rated the Underworld franchise as the best vampire versus werewolf movie. The film series follows characters who are caught up in a war between vampires and werewolves, who are known as lichens in the film, which start out as Matrix-inspired action scenes. The series stars Kate Beckinsale as Celine, who is the protagonist's death dealer, avoiding the never-ending hail of ultraviolet bullets as she dons a skin-tight latex suit that Celine sports throughout the franchise. The gnarly bloodlines of the vampire family tree and ever-shifting political alliances set the franchise apart from its creature feature peers, and of course its hybrids, which have never been seen in any other films in the list, as the main storyline. The film series comprises of 5 feature films, starting with Alexander Corvinus, who survived the plague in the early 5th century, but due to a mutation made him immortal, and he passes on to his sons, twin brothers Marcus and William, and a third unnamed child. How it all started was William was bitten by a wolf, giving him special powers, transforming him into the first werewolf, and then Marcus was bitten by a bat, making him the first vampire, whereas Alexander's third son lay dormant and lived a normal life, passing his latent powers on to his offspring. William took the form of a bloodthirsty beast and was able to rip humans apart easily, with infectious bites turning surviving victims into werewolves themselves. But here lies the problem. William was a wolf all of the time, and unable to turn back into human form, and so was unable to be controlled, which ensued in the beginning of the vampire versus werewolf war. Then over to the vampires, who aren't the textbook vampires in other movies as you've seen, as although they are immortal feeders on blood, they also have a variety of powers and abilities, such as super strength, heightened reflexes, and an accelerating healing factor. Sunlight can still cook these vampires to a crisp, but the Underworld vampires are not vulnerable to silver. However, for their werewolf counterparts, silver is fatal. And then, most importantly, you can't be a vampire and a werewolf at the same time, with the rare exception of being bitten by both species is fatal. Another difference is that drinking someone else's blood lets the vampires relive the victim's memories, and this is used to tell whether the target is telling the truth, and drinking another vampire's blood also passes on any special abilities, such as the immunity to sunlight. For one factor, given Underworld's focus on legacy and bloodlines, is that vampires are able to mate and have vampire offspring. As the war raged for centuries, one of the werewolves gave birth to a new species of werewolf called lichens, appearing human until the moon turned full, where they are turned into monstrous beasts who are smarter easier to control their regular werewolves, and eventually learning to change their form at will. The leader of the Lycans' quest to topple the vampire regime, Lucien, played by Michael Sheen, began to research hybrids and found that only direct members of the Alexander Corvinus genetic bloodline could become hybrids, so searched for Alexander's unnamed son's descendants, with plans to infuse Lycan and vampire blood to create an all-powerful hybrid creature. Any Lycan or vampire drinking a hybrid's blood would magnify their existing powers, whilst removing their weaknesses to sunlight or silver. They discover Michael Corvin, played by Scott Speedman, as the descendant who falls in love with Celine and turns into a hybrid after being bitten by both species, and he becomes the key to end the war. If you enjoyed this movie, why not check out some of the best superpower movies by clicking on the screen right now.